You know, I open the majority of my workshops acknowledging the fear of people in the room. And it's usually from one of these three. Fear of the future. There's a real uncertainty about the impact of AI and what it will be like in our future. There's a fear about our jobs and what that will look like in education and whether AI will replace us. And there's also a fear about technology itself. Some of us tell ourselves that we're just not good with tech. So there's a fear about, just working with technology. Today, I want to share what my greatest fear is with AI when it comes to educators. And it's not any of those above. And it's also not the usual culprits. It's not bias. We've been dealing with bias in education forever. It just has a new medium. And it's not data security or privacy. Not to play that down, but that's not the biggest issue that I believe we as educators should be concerned about. Welcome to Trailblazing Schools, the podcast for educational leaders at the intersection of leadership, complexity, and intelligent technology. I'm Trudy Graham. This is a space for leaders navigating uncharted territory. We explore strategic leadership, ethical innovation, and how AI can strengthen the deeply human work of education. My greatest fear about AI for educators is workload. And me calling out workload might surprise you, given how much time AI saves you in getting things done, like emails and reports and lesson plans. And I'll admit, it's the reason I started sharing what I do with AI so widely with educators. I've even talked about AI as a productivity hack in a previous episode. But there's an irony in all of this. And we've seen it before. For me, email is the most telling example. You see, when I think back to the early 90s and the promise of email, and I'll confess, I don't actually remember sending or receiving my first email. I just can't bring that back into my memory. I have no recollection. But you know what I do remember? I remember the promises that it made, or that were made at the time. Things like paperless offices, saving time, the convenience of it. And again, ironically, look how that has turned out. Email is almost a textbook case example of a technology that delivered on a narrow efficiency promise while generating a much larger productivity cost that no one predicted. The economist Eric Brynjolfsson coined the term productivity paradox in a 1993 paper. And it's also known as the Solow paradox, S-O-L-O-W. And it's in reference to the economist Robert Solow, who quipped, "You can see the computer age everywhere, but in the productivity statistics." And it's the observation that massive investments in new technology, such as computers, and in the modern example, AI, often fail to yield immediately measurable boosts in worker productivity when it's aggregated. And as more investment is made in technology, worker productivity may go down instead of up. You see, what I see happening is AI saves a teacher, say, 2 hours on lesson planning, but that time doesn't go to rest or reflection or deeper work with students, it goes to the next item on the list that expands to meet it. There's more differentiation, there's more data, reporting, more communication, more compliance. There's always more. The workload contracts in one place and then it fills back everywhere else. I went looking. It's like what Aristotle said, nature abhors a vacuum, meaning that empty space never persists. Something is going to rush in to fill it. And this is where it gets interesting, because there's research now. The researchers are Aruna Ranganathan and Xingqi Maggie Yi. They did an 8-month study of how generative AI changed work habits at a US-based technology company with 200 employees. And they found that the employees worked at a faster pace, took on a broader scope of tasks, and extended work into more hours of the day, often without being asked to do so. Reading from their article titled AI Doesn't Reduce Work, It Intensifies It, which was published in the Harvard Business Review in February this year, 2026. What they found is, on their own initiative, workers did more because AI made doing more feel possible, accessible, and in many cases intrinsically rewarding. And boy, does that sound familiar. Their research identified that generative AI intensified work in 3 forms. The first one, task expansion. Second, blurred boundaries between work and non-work. And the third one, more multitasking. So let's get into it. First one, task expansion. So they tracked workers increasingly taking on responsibilities that previously belonged to others. In the tech company, they cited product managers and designers writing code, researchers taking on engineering tasks. They found staff willingly attempted work they would have previously outsourced, deferred, or avoided entirely. And interestingly, generative AI tools reduce dependency on others. It provides immediate feedback and it creates what feels like a cognitive boost. What they wrote next rings true for me. They said workers described this as just trying things with the AI, but these experiments accumulated into a meaningfully widening of job scope. In fact, workers increasingly absorbed work that might previously have justified additional help or headcount. And you see, what I can already see playing out in education is teachers turning to AI to generate responses to challenges and issues where previously a specialist would be the go-to. Just last week, I heard rural and remote principals describing specialists in students with disabilities, therapists, and social workers being lost to larger centres. There's nothing new in that space, but I can see very quickly AI being a gap filler for advice and guidance in how to support students in the absence of readily accessible professionals. And while additional staff and services are justified, the reality on the ground right now is that there are workforce gaps across the board. You can just see how AI can fill that gap. If you see yourself as a trailblazer and you're looking for structured, strategic support to lead with clarity and conviction, visit trudygraham.com.au/connect. That's where leaders begin the conversation about working together. I'd welcome the opportunity to partner with you. Now, the second form from the researchers was blurred boundaries between work and non-work. And again, reading from their HBR article, they say, because AI made beginning a task so easy, it reduced the friction of facing a blank page or unknown starting point. Workers slipped small amounts of work into moments that had previously been breaks. Many prompted AI during lunch, in meetings, all while waiting for a file to load. Some described sending a quick last prompt right before leaving their desk so that the AI could work while they stepped away. Ouch. I'm guilty. And this takes me back to a previous podcast episode with Dr. Jodie Richardson. She spoke about punctuating our days, putting in deliberate pauses to reset the nervous system. If we are engaged in conversation with a large language model during our breaks, early mornings, late evenings on work tasks, our human system has no downtime. I'll also confess that I've advocated for playing with AI in your personal life to take risks, test the technology, discover what it's capable of, so that you can apply what you've learnt to your professional life. And I still stand by that, but I'll now put a warning label on that advice. Be intentional about your boundaries and watch for AI use slipping into pockets where previously you were not engaged in work. I'll loop back to the email example again and point out that 30 years down the track, we now have organisations setting policies for employees' response times and managing expectations with external stakeholders about response timelines. It's gone full loop, right? Let's not wait 30 years to take control of AI in our lives. Start setting up, communicating, and applying those boundaries for yourself now. Talk about it in team and staff meetings. Get on the front foot with this. And from the research, the third form, more multitasking. The professionals within the tech company at the centre of the study were managing several active threads at once. They were manually writing code while AI generated an alternative version. They were running multiple agents in parallel, or reviving long-deferred tasks because AI couldn't handle them in the background. The AI feels like a partner that could help take on some of the workload. But what happens in reality is attention switching, checking AI responses, a growing list of open or unused tasks. It feels like constant juggling. And I'm going to say just because you can doesn't mean you should. I can already envision teachers with multiple platforms operating at once. Planning units, writing lessons, running deep research, generating images, producing slide decks, and your attention is split across it all. It's exhausting. And there's something else I've noticed. Increased outputs that are generated really quickly require follow-up actions that need time and commitment. I find myself in conversation with a large language model, a real back and forth solving some problem that I've identified in my work. And it creates great ideas, alternative points of view, plans that I'll potentially use, but not right now. And the week goes by and it's still sitting there because it requires bandwidth for me to act on it, to do the human stuff to make it fly. And I'm not the only one. I've had school leaders share with me that they've produced so much great stuff with their large language models, superb plans, but their staff are not ready for them. That's the human stuff, the leadership that takes time. And another education leader shared with me, they have so many conversations in their AI model. They are so overwhelmed by it, they can't do anything with it. So I might add this as a fourth form of intensification. It's more human follow-through. The AI outworks the human, who becomes the bottleneck. And whether it's ourselves or it's the others we work with, there's more work generated in the follow-through. That's work intensification. So my question for you, as I close out this episode, what have you noticed in your experience with AI? Are the productivity gains real? Or are you noticing work intensification? And as a practical next step, just take notice. If you get a task that typically took 10 hours and it's done in 1 hour, what are you doing with the other 9? It's my greatest fear that we just keep doing more because we can. Take some time to reflect on that. And until next time, take care. You've been listening to Trailblazing Schools with me, Trudy Graham. If this episode brought someone to mind, share it with them. You'll find further reflections, practical resources and leadership tools in the show notes. Until next time, lead with courage, seek clarity and keep trailblazing.